Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Council meeting of the 9th of December 2024. Due to unfinished business from the previous meeting, I would like to adjourn this meeting. Do I have a mover for that motion? Councillor Baillieu? No, Hollingsworth?
I propose an adjournment, thank you.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Gold?
So moved, Mayor.
Anyone opposed? I put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? It's unanimous. I declare the motion carried. The meeting is now adjourned.
Councillors, I'd like to resume the service delegated meeting. Do I have someone to put the motion forward? Councillor Ibuki.
So moved, Chair.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sinfield.
Happy to second.
I declare the correction. Put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. And the Service Delegated Committee meeting resumed. Councillors, we're now moving to item 3.3 for tonight, contract number 2023/206, Concrete Miscellaneous Maintenance Services Panel. And Sean Martin will be speaking to the motion, to the item.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. As the responsible road authority, Council is responsible for maintaining approximately 1,300 kilometres of path, 1,100 kilometres of curb and channel, 80 kilometres of laneways, and 22 kilometres of concrete roads and other road-related assets. The proposed panel contract aims to appoint appropriately experienced and qualified contractors to provide and ensure the efficient and continuous maintenance of Council's assets within the road space. Works to be completed under this proposed contract originate from three primary areas: customer requests, officer inspections conducted under the Road Management Plan, and condition inspections undertaken under Council's renewal program. We are pleased to report that the tender process has been a competitive one with 19 submissions and has been undertaken in accordance with Council's Procurement Policy 2024. Of note was the high standard of environmental management plans within the tenders demonstrated alignment with Circular Economy Model 12R principles, in particular reduce, reuse and recycle. This report seeks toward contracts under three contract panels: concrete replacement services, concrete grinding services, and miscellaneous services for an initial period of 3 years with an option of 2 increments of 1-year extensions with a possible maximum term of 5 years. The proposed contract is a schedule of rates contract, under which the contractors will provide services on an as-needed or programmed basis. The Tender Evaluation Panel has assessed all tenders received against quantitative and qualitative criteria and is satisfied that the recommended contractors can perform the required work and demonstrate the best value for money to Council. The officer's recommendations are contained within the report, and I ask Council to consider the report now.
Councillors, there's no public submissions tonight on this item, so we'll move straight to questions for the officers. Are there any questions for the officers? Councillor Pattis.
Thank you, Chair. Why is the term 3 to 5 years not in the officer's recommendation? Or maybe I'm not seeing it. It is 3 to 5. So it's in, sorry, so yes, it's option 1. It's actually at the end there. I just wanted to be clear that it's a maximum of 5 years and a minimum of 3. It's okay, I've answered my own question. Sorry, Chair. I did.
Thank you, Councillor Pattis. Councillor Sinfield.
I don't have a question, but I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation when the time's right.
Councillor Fran Piera.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, given the significance of concrete as a source of emissions, carbon emissions, how does the recycle reuse strategies of council and the low carbon concrete strategies of council play out in this in this contract, and how are we addressing those issues?
Thank you, Councillor, and through you, Chair. Through the tender process, council officers have reviewed and scored potential contractors against several criteria, one of which is environmental sustainability. Officers have been impressed with the environmental management plans provided by all tenderers. Responses also included committed use of low carbon concrete, and this is available for major suppliers and meets council's standards regarding hardness, workability, and also the aggregate sizing. The reductions in this low carbon concrete range from 30% to 50%, and we will encourage and monitor the use of this low carbon contract within by our contractors.
Councillors, are there any further questions for the officers? If there are no further questions, I put it to the councillors. Is there anyone, correction? Councillor Pattis.
I was going to move the motion, Chair.
Before we get to that, I would like to note that Councillor Sinfield, you have foreshadowed a motion. Councillor Sinfield?
I'm sorry.
Happy to move the officer's recommendation, Chair.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Pattis? Is anyone opposed? With no one opposed, Councillor Sinfield, as the mover, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Only briefly, and that is to commend the motion to my colleagues and thank the officers for reviewing the tenders and the work that's been done behind the scenes to reach this point. So thank you.
Councillor Pattis, as the seconder, do you wish to speak to the motion or reserve your right to speak later?
Reserve my right.
Councillors, I'll now put the motion to vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Councillors, we now move on to general business. Are there any matters of general business? Take that as no. We now move on to urgent business. Are there any matters of urgent business? Take that as a no. Confidential business. Councillors, are there any matters of confidential business? Take that as a no. Before I close the meeting, I want to thank all who have joined us tonight. I declare the Service Delegated Committee meeting closed.
Can I please have a mover and a seconder to reopen the meeting, please? Councillor Abuki,
So moved, Madam Chair.
Councillor John Friend Pereira.
Seconded.
Thank you. I declare the meeting reopened, resumed. Good evening, everyone. We will commence the reading by reading the Acknowledgement of Country. I call upon Councillor Nolan to read the Acknowledgement of Country. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people as the traditional owners and original custodians of this land and pay my respects to the elders past and present and the elders from other communities who may be here today.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Before we commence the meeting, I request that all mobile telephones are turned off or switched to silent. Thank you. The council meeting is being live streamed on the council YouTube page, so you can watch the proceedings of the meetings, council deliberations and voting. The meeting will also be recorded and made available on the council website as soon as practicable after the meeting. My name is Councillor Sophie Tawney and I am the Mayor of Boroondara City Council, and I'll start by introducing my fellow councillors. Seated to my left is Councillor Hollingsworth, Councillor Ibuki, Councillor Galt, Councillor Nolan, Councillor Simfield, and seated to my right at the horseshoe table is the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Franco, Councillor Osborne-Smith, Councillor Baillieu, Councillor Friend Pereira, and Councillor Pattis. Welcome. I also acknowledge in attendance this evening our Chief Executive Officer, Mr Philip Storer, and our Coordinator of Governance, Kirsten Ritchie. There are other officers in attendance tonight and they will be introduced as required. I'll now move to apologies. Ms Ritchie, are there any apologies for this evening?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, there are no apologies for tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Ms Ritchie. The declaration of conflict of interest, councillors and council officers. Are there any conflicts of interest that you wish to foreshadow for the matters on the agenda tonight? No conflicts, thank you. So I'd like to move to the third item, notices of motion. Ms Ritchie, do we have any notices of motion?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, we have 4 notices of motion for tonight's meeting.
Madam Mayor, I may, if I can, address notice of motion number 58, which relates to the council budget process. I would like to draw attention to a typographical error in point 2 of that notice of motion. In the very last line, it should say June 25-26. So I'm suggesting that should say June 25-26. So it's actually the end of the financial year, which is going to be in June 2025. So the easiest way, I think, for us to deal with this is actually change that date to 30th of June 2025. Yeah, no, I'm just change it to June 2025.
Yep. Thank you, Mr Storer. The governance rules require that all notices of motion are considered in the order in which they've been received. Councillors, I'm in search of a mover for notice of motion 55, Kew Library. Councillor Nolan?
I'd like to move the notice of motion number 55.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Osborne-Smith?
Yeah.
Councillor Franco?
Just a comment, Chair. There is a seconder already there in the motion, so...
It doesn't matter. We still move it on the night. We still ask for it on the night. Thank you. So, Councillor... Who's the seconder now? Who's Osborne-Smith?
Just confirm whether he wasn't seconding.
Councillor Osborne-Smith, were you seconding the motion?
Happy to second, thank you.
Councillors, is anyone opposed? Councillor Simfield? Councillor Nolan, as the mover, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you. So Kew Library is a place to read, a place to study, a place to read the latest magazines. It's a place to pick up and drop off books. Importantly, Kew Library is a place where parents and kids have met regularly for generations to borrow toys, and the community has met in the meeting room, a room where people have held many meetings and events for years. This was the Kew Town Hall until council amalgamations to become Berendara, when it was converted into a library. It has a classic 1960s look and feel about it. And I've learned through door knocking in the last few months, there is a strong sentimental attachment to Kew Library, which is intergenerational. Now, a decision was taken earlier this year by council to demolish the Kew Library and build a new building. And this would create a construction site on this site for 3 years, with limited services offered elsewhere at an estimated cost of around $22 million. This motion tonight is to pause the complete demolition and redevelopment and instead to examine in detail 4 options to extend the life of the existing library. Those options being there to see under point 1, A, B, C and D, which are first, an extensive refurbishment, second, a minimal refurbishment, third, critical maintenance only, and fourth, those works necessary to give the library another 4 years of service. So why bring this motion tonight? First, 2/3 of the community I have spoken to say, why? What's wrong with it? We love that library. We weren't consulted. There is a strong sentimental and intergenerational attachment to it. This is consistent with the latest community consultation themes of infrastructure cost, the Kew Recreation Centre issues, and valuing heritage. Some people that I've spoken to, and many other councillors have spoken to, go further and say we need to get Kew Rec Centre open before we should even think about demolishing Kew Library. In other words, we need to ascertain the financial liabilities from the Kew Rec Centre that may or may not impact Council's 2025-26 and 2026-27 budget. This motion before you, number 55, will enable us to see a more thorough analysis of the feasibility and cost of all the options for Kew Library, as per the 4 options in the motion. And starting with the premise, it starts with the premise that many residents would prefer we keep the existing library building anyway. But then what is the cost of critical refurbishment, minimal refurbishment, critical maintenance or necessary works for 4 years life extension? We need to see in detail what would be involved and what it would cost to refurbish with, for example, a new roof, some electrical rewiring, some new sewer pipes. I haven't been through the tour yet. New councillors haven't, but these are some of the things that have been put to us. Also, we want to see in detail what would be involved in a modest refurbishment. Perhaps new windows overlooking Alexandra Gardens, some new carpet, a lighting upgrade, maybe some new meeting rooms, builders extensions or other functional requirements. We need to see whether spending $22 million and having Kew Library 3 years out of action is really the best option we should pursue, given everything I've mentioned. So this motion, by voting yes for this motion, we push pause on plans for demolition and we take time to look at the 4 options to do with keeping the existing building, as opposed to pushing on with a construction project that 2/3 of people I've spoken to don't want. Not only have I heard from community that this is what they want, I also strongly believe this is the best course of action in the wider sense of our upcoming council budgets. And if there is a better way to provide an ongoing library amenity in Kew while behaving responsibly with council budgets, then we need to explore existing library options more fully and so pass this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Councillor Osborne-Smith, as a seconder, would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
I reserve my right, thank you.
Thank you. Does any other councillor wish to speak or comment? Councillor Galt.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I've got 4 points I wish to raise tonight in relationship to this motion. The first one is in consultation and support. And we did ask the question during the processing of this project, was there detailed community consultation? The answer was yes. And I've got no doubt that that took place. But during the council elections, I did door knock much of the area, around that area and to the east. And only one person remembers or has any memory of that consultation, and only one person supported the proposal that was moved at the end of the year. And I think other councillors found similar results when talking to people during that time. A lot of people were cross about the proposal to demolish. My second point is, during that project development, there was often asked for a minimal proposal. I think it was called the paint and carpet option, but it was more akin to option B on the current motion. It never was put forward. And one of the reasons for asking for it is this building, the town hall, the old town hall itself, is a portal structure. It has no internal columns and makes it highly flexible and easy to adjust and move function around, ideal for modifying. My third point is there was a very clever proposal put forward for a reading court, and the only way it felt that that was going to be achieved is by lowering the whole building. I would put to you tonight that you don't need to demolish the building to do that. We could readily build a ramp into a park, which we also own, and build a reading court in the park. My fourth and final point is to do with embodied energy. In the last few years, we have declared a climate emergency as a council, and we have brought in a very ambitious climate action plan. We need to show leadership in both of these things, and I don't believe that's considered in the embodied energy we would do away with by demolishing this building. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gold. Councillor Simfield.
Thank you. I'd like to start with a walk down memory lane and take us back to 2017 when we gathered information from the community on their vision for the Kew Library redevelopment. 2017 is when consultation started on this. In fact, I think informally it was actually well before that. From 2018, we researched community needs and explored opportunities for great contemporary library design summarised in the draft Vision and Design Brief, along with the 2017 community consultation findings. Community consultation on the draft Vision and Design Brief ran from the 28th of August to the 29th of September 2023, which was the second round of community consultation, inviting feedback on the vision for the new Kew Library. Officers then reviewed the feedback and briefed councillors on that in late 2023. The Vision and Design Brief was presented at a council meeting on the 25th of March 2024. We then entered the design phase, which is where we've found ourselves now. And I think it is utterly abhorrent to suggest that officers and the previous council have not done their due diligence and not researched this project and not consulted the community. The project is unrelated to Kew Library, to Kew Rec Centre, unless, of course, you want to read books in the pool or you've somehow found a way to swim in a library. It's not something I've tried to do. This motion tonight to direct the architects engaged to prepare the design for replacement of Kew Library to pause their current design work will come at a cost. And it'd be nice if there was an opportunity to ask officers what that cost is. But it certainly creates exposure and risk for this council. I would suggest there is legal advice that we should go into confidential business and perhaps talk about in relation to this. But if the councillors around their table had done their research and had been patient enough to have a briefing or make themselves available to officers to be briefed thoroughly on this project, we wouldn't be in this situation. Frankly, our community deserves better than a library that was built as a town hall in 1960. The community of Kew deserves better. The residents of Balwyn have got a nice new library that was refurbished a few years ago and is a spectacular example of a library. North Balwyn's got a lovely library lounge. We've got libraries all over the city that have been redone, except Kew is still sitting in a musty, derelict town hall. I'm appalled that this council sees fit to move such a poor piece of governance in moving a notice of motion tonight, and I'm terribly sorry for our community, not just in Kew but more broadly, that the cost that this will come at.
Thank you, Councillor Simfield. Bang on 3 minutes. Thank you. Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep my comments brief. I'll be supporting the motion. I think we have a council now comprising 7 new councillors. This is what due diligence looks like. Councillor Simfield has just described this motion as utterly abhorrent and appalling. and I do take exception to that description. What we have here is nothing but due diligence. It is incumbent upon us as an elected council to carefully consider such a large and significant project and look at the options, look at the issues. It doesn't commit us to any particular course of action. It commits us to looking thoroughly and diligently at the issues before us. It's responsible governance. And I think we can only define the way we move forward after we have this information. And I'd even go further, and I think this is an improvement on the practices of the past council to actually look at this in a critical and thorough way that's being proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Councillor Pattis.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I will be in support of the motion as the officers. As the motion that's on the screen there. There is no reason why a new council can't review anything that the previous council looked at. In fact, the community, through its election process, has said that they want greater accountability, transparency in decision-making and responsible spending. So I think reviewing what we've done and asking the officers to provide options is very, very responsible.
Thank you, Councillor Pattis. I would like to make a comment about the motion. I want to acknowledge that this motion comes from concerns raised by the community about the future of the much-loved Kew Library. Many residents felt they weren't consulted and were understandably surprised to learn about the proposed demolition and rebuild. As councillors, it's upon us to ensure that when we make significant decisions like this, the community feels heard and is brought along in the process. At the same time, in a cost of living crisis, we must be mindful of responsible spending, and in a climate crisis, we have responsibility to prioritise sustainable practices, including retaining existing structures where possible. I look forward to the officers' report, which will give us the feasibility and costs we need to make an informed and balanced decision that reflects our community's values and wishes. I'll be supporting the motion. Thank you. Councillor Osborne-Smith, do you wish to speak?
No further comments, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Nolan.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So, look, in summing up, a lot has changed since early this year. We have a new council, we have an upcoming budget with new priorities, we have a new renewed focus on Boroondara-wide costs. Our council's heritage precincts have come under pressure. We still have one key unknown on costs, the impact on council of the commercial settlement of the Kew Rec Centre redevelopment contracts. I don't come to this lightly, this motion. I'm not using emotional words. I've been in that library plenty of times this year already. It looks and feels as good as it has for the last 5 or 10 years I've been in there that I can remember. By pushing pause, we give up very little. The advantage is we get to look at the options to keep the existing Kew Library building. We get to examine the various remediation or modest refurbishment options more thoroughly. By pushing pause, we might find there is a better refurbishment or remediation option that reduces budget constraints elsewhere, while Kew Recreation Centre construction commercial issues are and need to be resolved. I believe there is every possibility we can avoid creating a construction site for 3 years at Kew Library, where right now there is a functioning library, reading, meeting, studying amenity. And if there is a better way to provide an ongoing library amenity in Cotham Road, Kew, perhaps with improvements, and if this helps us deliver the new priorities for residents, that residents want us to focus on, then we absolutely need to know that better way forward. And so we need to pass this motion that would pause plans for demolition while officers can look and are given the opportunity to look more carefully how we might prolong the life of the existing Kew Library building with a strong resident-centred perspective and in a financially prudent way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. I will now put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion carried. Councillors, I'm now in search of a mover for the second notice of motion 56, Kew Recreation Centre. Councillor Gold,
Happy to move that motion as displayed.
do I have a seconder? Councillor Baillieu.
Seconded.
Councillors, is anyone opposed? Councillor Sinfield. Councillor Gold, as the mover, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Delighted to, Mayor. The building has had much of its steelwork removed, and whilst there is much concrete work in the ground and much site preparation, much of the work is fairly early in the building process. No other aquatic centre or similar facility such as this in Victoria that I know of is proceeding at this point in time with gas boilers. St Albans, Northcote, Melton, Dandenong, Sandringham are all projects that are recently completed or now in work. None are proposing gas boilers except as supplementary sources to stop coil freezing. Why would we proceed with a building using antiquated technology? The second point I'd like to get to is again mentioning tonight that only a short number of years ago we declared a climate emergency. We adopted a climate action plan, and both of those are being revised. And the Boroondara Community Plan calls for substantially more action on climate. We also have one of the most successful community alliances in Electrify Boroondara, which is strongly promoting getting off gas. Yet we're still proposing formally to use gas for one of our major new recreation centres. Council needs to lead on this, not be guided by other things. My next point is to do with cost. We all would tend to lapse back to that. The cost of gas has risen dramatically in recent years and is threatened to keep doing so. The cost of electricity has fallen and we believe it will fall further. So let us now finally have a full professional report on the heat pump option. Why is this option working for many other councils throughout Victoria and we're perceiving at this point in time it's not for us? I'm looking forward to this report and encourage you all to vote for this motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gold. Councillor Baillieu, as a seconder, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I wish to reserve my right, Chair.
Thank you. Does any other councillor wish to speak or comment? Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you. Yes, I do. I'm opposed to the motion on the screen essentially because of part 2 and requesting that the builder of the Kew Recreation Centre, ADCO, delay the purchase of any part of the construction materials required while we are in a very delicate situation and negotiation is, in my opinion, a silly move. I think it exposes council to risk. And in relation to the point raised by Councillor Gold, that we being the council, seek an independent report in relation to the degasification of the site and the implementation of electric heat pumps as the heating methodology on the site. That's already been done. It's been commissioned. It was an independent report and it's been considered by the steering committee. The advice was not to go down that path. That's the reality. You might not like the advice that we received, but the steering committee was briefed on it. And that was the advice of the independent people, the experts in the field who provided that advice. So, I don't sit here and profess to be an expert in heating methodology for a significant public pool complex, but I'll take the advice of experts.
I would like to speak regarding the motion. I'll be supporting this motion because it reflects what our community expects. environmentally responsible and financially prudent decisions. Moving away from gas is essential as we transition to cleaner energy sources. Gas is a fossil fuel that contributes to emissions, and investing in it now locks us into outdated technology and higher costs. Exploring the feasibility of heat pumps gives us the chance to future-proof the Kew Recreation Centre, reduce emissions, and aligns with our climate goals, whilst also giving the community long-term savings. Delaying the purchase of gas boilers is a responsible step to ensure we get this right. I'll be supporting this motion. Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, through you, Chair.
Oh,
So,
sorry, continue, Councillor Nolan.
So I just want to make one point, that this is resolving to direct officers to submit a report to a meeting of council in February 2025, which is 2.5 months away. So I don't think, irrespective of what's happened and what advice has been given about heat pumps some years ago, waiting now for 2 months, I think is most likely to be immaterial to any other changes. And I do note that the Northcote Aquatic Centre started at the same time, opened in November 2023, has with all electric, and has had 1 million visitors, I think, till pretty recently. So I'll be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Councillor Baillieu, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Galt.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Look, I'll only comment on a few things briefly. I'll go back to comments I made before about potential additional costs from delays, etc. I'm absolutely sure that this project has a very competent quantity surveyor, has a very competent programming consultant working with it, and a very solid Australian standard type contract, which allows us to challenge any unfair claims made by a contractor. I'm not particularly concerned about it, and I think fair prices can be worked out. I don't think that's a major risk. There certainly was a report some time ago, but from memory, at that time we were concerned deeply about the rising cost of this project. Its initial estimates were low and they'd risen over time due to all sorts of additions and changes, and there was a deep fear within council about pushing that cost any higher. When that report came out some time ago, I think there was an additional cost of $5 million, and clearly the assembled councillors didn't want to go down that track. But I'd say you need to view that in the historic content and the area that was considered. There was a deep fear of it. But the big thing that also has changed, technology has moved forward in leaps and bounds. And I suspect we will find some of the things we look at now are greatly improved on what they were 2 years ago and 4 years ago. So I look forward deeply to seeing what the consultants come up with and what report they bring to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gold. I will now put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion carried. Councillors, I'm now in search of a mover for notice of motion 57, the Climate Action Advisory Committee. Councillor Gold?
Thank you, Mayor.
I'd like to
move I'd like to move the motion as it appears. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Nolan.
I'd like to second the motion.
Councillors, is anyone opposed? Councillor Sinfield? Can I use the mover again? It's confusing. Councillor Gold, as the mover, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I do indeed. Thank you very much. I'd like to recognise at the outset that we have great expertise within our council, with our officers, and we've been getting great advice on things as we move forward on that committee, on the Climate Action Plan Advisory Committee. But also we're blessed with some wonderful expertise within our community and the broader Melbourne groups we mix with. It would be wonderful, I believe, to bring this expertise to supplement the skills that we believe will be on our committee this year, to add ideas, to add resources, and hopefully as a result better optimise the outcomes for our community. I see the first steps, and we haven't really defined how we'd go about it, but I would anticipate we'd work as a group to establish close terms of reference to what we want to achieve by bringing expertise on board, and then hopefully select the best people that come forward out of expressions of interest. I'd like to think that after that we join these group into our larger group and workshop the results as how we go forward with the Climate Action Plan. Then I look forward to, after we do that and revise the Climate Action Plan and the Implementation Plan, to consult the wider community prior to revising and finalising the Climate Action Plan as we go forward. And also hope that these experts that join us will assist us on the ongoing implementation of the Climate Action Plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gold. Councillor Nolan, as the seconder, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I wish to reserve my right.
Thank you. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm unresolved whether I'll be supporting this or not. I seek some advice from governance. Could we put forward a motion to amend a notice of motion?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, yes, you can.
Thank you. Then I would like to foreshadow an amendment to this motion. And if I may not speak to an amendment, but I'll just speak to why I'm somewhat unresolved with this. My reasons are we already have the Burundara Climate Action Plan Advisory Committee, and I know how much time officers, councillors, staff and interested parties invest in forming that committee, working on that committee and delivering action plan outcomes for our community. I would like to consider whether or not this could be incorporated into our existing Burundara Climate Action Committee, but as an external committee to enable external members of community and stakeholders to form part of the committee or to attend the committee meetings, and that would save then duplicating the role of a Climate Action Advisory Committee. So I would like to put that for consideration, and I ask the mover of the motion if he would like to speak to that concept. Thank you.
So this is a new committee that replaces the existing committee. It's not that there will be two committees.
So the existing Climate Action Plan Committee will be dissolved?
Or not reformed, yes. It'll be this committee with an external
So this will then become the Burundara Climate Action Advisory Committee?
Yes.
Thank you for clarification. Thank you.
Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to make the same point, and I'll be supporting the motion. As someone who spent 4 years on Council's previous Climate Action Committee, I am a long-standing supporter of bringing in external expertise to the committee, whether by membership and also through invited guests as well. And I think it is critical that a new council review the climate action strategy and implementation plan and take these steps. I very much welcome the motion that Councillor Gold has moved. Thank you.
Councillor Pattis.
Madam Mayor, just a question through you to the officers. How would these experts normally be selected?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Freer.
Through you, Madam Mayor, typically we would run an expression of interest process with a series of criteria in a case like our climate action plan, we may consider the 6 themes that are within the existing plan and seek experts to address each of those themes to effectively put forward their credentials for then an assessment of those applicants and determination.
Does that clarify for you? I would like to speak to this motion. I'll be supporting the motion. We're in the midst of a climate crisis. We can all feel its effects. They're no longer abstract. They're here and they're impacting us through changes in weather patterns, extreme events, and the significant costs these bring to our communities. This is a challenge that requires action from all 3 levels of government, each with its own distinct role. As the level of government closest to the community, our role includes supporting the community, informing and educating, as well as focusing on mitigation and adaptation strategies as outlined in the Local Government Act. I'll be supporting this motion because addressing the climate crisis isn't something we can do alone. It requires the involvement of our community, and what better way to achieve this than by drawing on the expertise and insights of community and experts through this advisory committee. We need to ensure that our revised climate strategy and implementation plan is informed, robust and reflective of our community's expectations. This is an important step. Councillor Hollingsworth, you have already spoken. You can only speak once, but I will allow this.
Thank you for indulgence. I just wanted to ask if, for clarity, the fact that I was confused with this as a new advisory committee with no reference to the removing of the current committee, whether or not there could be some improvement of word choice to actually say establish a new advisory committee to replace the current Climate Action Plan Advisory Committee or something to that effect, because it is somewhat ambiguous with the word choice. Might be implied, but yeah. I didn't know, and I'm a councillor, so I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Councillor Hollingsworth, thank you for your question and point of clarification. The current committee has expired and doesn't currently exist, so we are forming a new committee in this council term. Does that answer your question?
Again, that wasn't explained to me, but I can see all of you nodding. Clearly there's been conversations I haven't been privy to. Thank you.
Councillor Nolan, as the seconder, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I do wish to speak to it, Madam Chair. Thank you. So this motion is mainly about creating an updated strategy for community emissions, which are 98% of Boroondara's emissions. This motion includes bringing in experts and then community on climate strategy. It is about tapping into the external experts and bringing new effort to help community reduce emissions to meet the Climate Action Plan strategy for Boroondara, the 10-year strategy. So what is new and why the review? Firstly, the economics are very, very new from when this strategy was conceived. For example, one external expert in this country, Saul Griffith and Rewiring Australia, have done an amazing amount of work since 2021 to show how the economics of electrification of households now stack up and how transition can be pursued at a postcode level. It has been worked out that electrification of passenger cars, households and apartments will save Boroondara residents completely $150 to $180 million per annum after financing costs. So we're now at a point where the return on investment, or the ROI, adds up for households. It is now in our economic self-interest as a Boroondara community to electrify, apart from the ethical issues. And we do know that some residents are sceptical and say climate action sits wholly at a state and at a federal government level. In contrast, we know younger generations overwhelmingly want action at every level of government and community. And there is a big demographic in the middle who want action when the economics stack up. And that's where we are today. 42% of Australia's emissions are from our households. That includes our vehicles, household gas use, and household electricity use. So today, the economics of electrification stack up, and the big demographic in the middle who will only act when the economics stack up need to be encouraged by Council. Today, at the end of 2024, Council has a very big role to play in bridging the gap between where the economics are and what happens in our community to help drive electrification and meet the 60% emissions reduction, which is Council's target by 2030 in community. So this motion is about Council updating its strategy based on 2024 emissions and economics. We need a new climate action advisory group with external experts who will help revise the climate strategy, help revise our implementation plan to be fit for purpose in 2025 and beyond. And I strongly commend this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Councillor Gold, would you like to?
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly make a couple of points. It takes me back to 4 years ago when we first set up this advisory group. And I think in the back of our minds at that time, we thought we'd draw in some external expertise. But due to absolute naivety at that time, I didn't realise you had to ask for it before we started. Now we're asking for it before we started and establish it, which is terrific. And over the past 4 years, we've been exposed to some wonderful groups within our community, some wonderful groups around Australia, and some wonderful experts. And I've often thought, gosh, it would be great to have those people working with us and advising us to help us optimise our outcomes. I think this is the chance to do that. So I urge you all to support this tonight and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gold. I will now put this motion. All those in favour? All those opposed? Against? I declare this motion carried. Councillors, I'm now in search of a mover for the notice of motion 58, Budget Process Review Advisory Committee. Councillor Pattis?
Madam Chair, I'd like to foreshadow moving this. I'd like to move it.
Thank you.
And then
Do I
give it-
have a seconder? Councillor Ibuki.
So seconded, Mayor.
Councillors, is anyone opposed? Councillor Pattis, as the mover, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I do, Madam Mayor. This council values financial sustainability, alignment to a strategic 10-year community plan, integrity, accountability and transparency. In this regard, it is important that one of our most important processes, the review and adoption of our annual budget, is not only accountable, responsible, but also transparent. For this reason, this council wishes for the community not only to view the budget we adopt, but also to be involved in ensuring the priorities are correct for from the community's perspective. Consulting with the community early in a budget process in no way takes away the responsibility of councillors to act on behalf of and in the interests of their community, as they in any case make the final decision. In fact, involving the community early in the process helps to ensure the decisions councillors in this city make are aligned to community priorities, which of course can change over time. It is with this in mind that we seek to strengthen the consultation with respect to this important process, the review and adoption of the annual budget, to determine how we will spend the community's money.
Thank you, Councillor Pattis. Councillor Ibuki, as a seconder, do you wish to speak to the motion or reserve your right?
I'd like to speak just briefly. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support Councillor Pattis's motion to form an internal advisory committee to review Council's budgetary consultation process, as this will complement the work Council already does, quite comprehensively, may I remark, around its consultation for its community plan. It's hoped that a more consultative process around Council's budget will reassure residents that the budget will deliver reasonably and sensibly on the priorities that they have identified. I look forward to the work from the Advisory Committee in reviewing opportunities that will deliver an improved and more effective consultative process around Boroondara's budget setting, a process that I note exists elsewhere within other councils. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abuki. I will now put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? I declare the motion carried unanimously. Thank you. This brings us to the end of the order of business for this meeting. Thank you to all who have joined us in the gallery and online, and I now declare the council meeting closed. Thank you.